Could Kenny Pickett be the first quarterback to come off the board in April's draft? And where is his best landing spot in the first round? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. We are the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk. You can follow me on Twitter at FFBallblast. And of course, as always, I am joined by Marcus Mosher. You could follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Give the show a follow at Locked On Dynasty and hit that subscribe button so that we can keep you updated on all the exciting news, all of the exciting draft prospect information that's going to help you get the edge in your dynasty leagues. You might be surprised to hear from us today. Usually it's a Matt and Ryan day, but Marcus, we were just so excited to talk about Kenny Pickett as a prospect that we had to booty bump him out of the way.
Yeah.
And take back over.
Matt and Ryan are also on vacation. That also had something to do about it. So you'll hear us for the next couple of days. But we're going to talk about Pickett today. Okay, and I want to know, when the number came out about Kenny Pickett's hands, did you and Michelle go and run to the tape measure and measure your hands?
We did, and I'm very happy to say my hands actually measured in just under 8 inches, which is unfathomable because I have
That's
these
0
world's
percentile. Yep.
That is 0 percentile, but for quarterbacks, which I mean, great company right alongside Kenny Pickett, who I think is also in the 0 percentile. So at least we're all in the same boat here. But I have the smallest hands in the entire world. So for me to measure in at 8, and like the thought of me handling an NFL football, right, is unfathomable. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot even like put that through my mind. And the fact that Kenny Pickett has to do that with just a half inch more to work with. Oof, I'm not feeling good about that, Marcus.
Right.
I don't know if you guys all ran to the tape measure as well.
We all did, right? Everybody did. I have hands that are just slightly bigger than Kenny Pickett's, but not much. And I can't.
And how would you feel handling an NFL football?
Not great. So my question, legitimately, too, is this concerning to you at all? Like, actually worried about how he's going to translate to the NFL?
I mean, it's on some kind of level, yes. I mean, is this a hand size? I don't think is anything. Any of these measurables are not necessarily things that should keep anybody off your draft board. Kind of like, I mean, Kyler Murray, he sort of broke the mold with just how small he was. But that shouldn't necessarily keep him off your draft board if he's a prospect you believe in. I think the same thing is true with Kenny Pickett, but for me, I'm not quite sold on Kenny Pickett. So I think the small hands, the just record-breakingly small hands, that's enough for me to be like, you know what, I'll pass in favor of some other some other options that might be a little bit safer. But I mean, let's just talk about the history of small hands in the NFL, because there's not a lot of players that have really done it with small hands. We had Joe Burrow coming in at 9 inches, which we know that hasn't been a problem for Joe Burrow. But most recently, after months of stretching exercises, Kenny Pickett just came in at 8 5/8 inches.
Something.
So that's even smaller.
So I've got the list, Kate, here of every quarterback since 2000 that is measured in with sub 9-inch hands. And it's Kyle Shermer, Jake Fromm, Brandon Allen, Dustin Vaughn, Jordan Lynch, Zach Thomas, Tyler Wilson, Skylar Thompson, Kenny Pickett, Connor Halliday, and Kevin Davidson. That is the list. And of that list, I mean, did any
Brandon Allen probably the most successful on that list?
Yeah, I mean, and that's Brandon Allen is what we're talking about for success. So it's not to say that he can't be successful, but it's going to be a major outlier for sure.
And you did have, like back in 2001, like I feel like I've heard this story too many times. Michael Vick's hand measured in at 8.5 inches, which is just a little bit smaller than Kenny Pickett at his 8 5/8 inches. But I mean, even if we want to say, are you thinking that Kenny Pickett's upside is that of Michael Vick's? Because heck no.
Yeah.
And so much of Michael Vick's game had to do with his legs and not his hands. So he had something extra to compensate. And though I do think Kenny Pickett is, I like the way he's able to maneuver the pocket. I think he's got an edge in mobility there. I still no, his game is not centered around his legs whatsoever. I just think that if you are looking at Kenny Pickett, you have to be looking at or believing in traits that are going to make him extraordinary elsewhere.
Yes.
And I don't see it. So this is going to be the Marcus Mosher selling Kate Magdziuk on Kenny Pickett podcast. There's a lot of pressure on you right now.
Well, I want to first talk about this because I've seen some snarky comments on Twitter about, well, he played in Pittsburgh. Why couldn't he just continue to do that in the NFL? Obviously he can play in that weather. I mean, Kate, you and I both know, Pittsburgh's weather really starts to change because we're both from the Pittsburgh area. In early December is when it starts to get really cold and windy, right? We'll get some really nice Octobers and Novembers, right? Most of the time, Kenny Pickett wrapped up his, college career, or he were done playing games in Pittsburgh by early November. I mean, once you get into late December and January, that's when you really get the rain and the wind and the snow. Pickett really doesn't have a lot of experience playing in that. So I don't think just because he played at Pitt in college necessarily means he's going to be a great fit in the NFL where your season is much, much longer.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking as somebody who's really enjoying Texas weather right now, in my 70s, 80s, creeping into the 90s, there was snow in Pittsburgh last week. All right. In the thick of things, in the middle of winter, the brutal and just absolutely bitter coldness, that is primetime football season. And if Pittsburgh's going to be planning to make it to some postseasons, I think you definitely have to consider that Pickett's hand size could be an issue.
So, I mean, as the way the schedule's set up right now, the first round of the playoffs is the second week in January. And that's when, again, people that aren't from Pittsburgh, that's when we start getting a lot of snow and stuff. And Pickett's never played in a game like that. So I think he's got to be somebody that plays in a dome or in nice weather, because, man, if you're having to wear gloves, outside all the time and your grip's just not going to be really good when the temperature is sub-freezing, it does make me really concerned about the teams that he could potentially land with.
Well, and let's talk about the gloves. So, I think that is another part of the conversation that, it's not a deal breaker. We saw Teddy Bridgewater come in and he was 2-glove Teddy. I have to imagine that Kenny Pickett playing with a somewhat larger ball at the NFL level is going to be 2-glove Kenny. And if we needed to see Kenny Pickett play with gloves, 2 gloves at the collegiate level, what are we going to do when we give him a slightly bigger ball, more turbulent weather? All of these things, they all concern me. And I mean, I want to get into the nitty gritty of him as a prospect and not just his hand size. Cause I feel like everybody's sick of talking about the hands, but again, I want to hammer home.
There's things
it's not about the hands. Yeah. It's about, can he overcompensate in other areas? And that's the question.
Yes. So let's get to him as a prospect. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships odds, podcasts, and reviews. I'm so excited for the Masters. It's one of my favorite weekends of the year. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, I want to first ask you this question about Kenny Pickett. He's been deemed the most pro-ready NFL quarterback of this class. Do you agree with that assessment?
No.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Like, I mean, I think there's, I mean, the threshold, I think, is a little bit lower for this class in general because we don't have one of these top end prospects, the top tiered prospect that everybody has going off as the first quarterback off the board. Malik Willis, we know he's not the pro ready prospect that you want him to be. I look at a prospect like Desmond Ritter, who we talked about yesterday, who I think has all of those just good decision making. Kenny Pickett has all of those, but I'm going to give Desmond Ritter the edge because I think he just has a little bit more of these physical tools to his arsenal, in addition to that good decision making that you want to see at the NFL level.
All right, so for Kenny Pickett to have success, so we should talk about where he ranks among dynasty quarterbacks right now. The last time I checked, he was quarterback 4, behind Malik Willis, behind Desmond Ritter, behind Sam Howell, behind Matt Corral. Does that feel right?
I see. I have him behind all of these guys.
You would have him as QB5.
I have him as QB5, and that I don't know. I can't get sold. So like 4-year starter, all right. And we saw in his final season there at Pitt the big leap of production that we saw with Joe Burrow, which was a huge question about Joe Burrow coming out. Is this a one-hit wonder? Is this going to be an issue at the NFL level that, it took us this long to see that breakout? In his final season, threw for 4,319 yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But again, he, at Pitt, his best games were against like not great defenses. I guess there's just so many question marks for me that I think other prospects are safer. But Marcus, this is something you've said, like when we were talking about some of the other quarterbacks in this class, is that you thought Kenny Pickett was just a tinge safer, despite maybe not having quite as high an upside. So explain the safety for me, because I don't see the safety.
I think there's safety in the fact that I think he's pretty accurate from the short to intermediate stuff. He's mobile enough to make it.
Ritter not.
Listen, if you're gonna make me compare Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ritter, you know which side I'm gonna be on here because we love Desmond Ritter. I think Pickett's game translates to the NFL pretty quickly, and I think if you put him on a good situation, he could be a point guard, right? Somebody that just gets the ball to the receivers, not necessarily going to elevate the players around him, but can just kind of keep the offense going. And I do think that makes him safe. I actually really like the Teddy Bridgewater comp. Teddy Bridgewater before the knee injury. But if you just need someone to come in and give you adequate to competent quarterback play, I think Kenny Pickett can do that. It's just, does he have the ceiling to consistently make plays down the field? I worry a little bit about his pocket presence. I don't think it's very good. But if he's behind a good offensive line and he has good weapons, I can see him being a fairly successful quarterback.
There's so many contingencies there in that very short span that you were talking about. I mean, he needs a good offensive line. He needs to be in. And that's when I start to say, like, if I'm setting all of these contingencies for what they need to be successful at the next level, that's when I start asking, is this the good fit? Like Kenny Pickett, you mentioned the comp to Teddy Bridgewater. We've also heard comps. Sam Darnold, I think he's kind of like, in my mind, he's like a mixed halfway between Sam Darnold, but maybe a little bit more, a little bit safer with the ball. Maybe like,
I think his decision making is a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I think he's like about halfway between a Sam Darnold and a Derek Carr for me, which one of those has had a delightful a delightful NFL career. But I mean, until very recently, it's not as though we were considering this guy a fantasy relevant quarterback to begin with. So let's bring it back to fantasy.
Yeah, for fantasy, I don't see a lot of upside here, right? Because you're hoping that he's like the 15th, the 16th quarterback in fantasy. I'd rather just gamble on somebody else or go a different direction, because you can find this guy, Kate, or you could trade for somebody like this. If you just need adequate production, I don't think this is somebody that you should be targeting in your redraft leagues and your rookie drafts, because there's just going to be better options available.
In the last 4 seasons, so like let's say, because I think best case scenario for me is that Kenny Pickett turns out to be a Derek Carr. That is best case scenario for me, given the comp, given everything there. Now,
it would be great for him if he could.
It would be fantastic for him, but for fantasy, Derek Carr has been a quarterback one in just 35% of his games over the last 4 seasons. Like that's a very big sample size, and that's not a ton of upside. I just no thank you. If that's the upside I'm chasing, which I think it is, then I'm out. I don't know.
Let me ask you this question. Is there a team that he could go to that would significantly change the way you view him?
No. Are there any that you suggest? Because I
do think there's one.
Just so blindsided, Marcus. Am I blindsided?
No, because I think the teams that he's been mentioned to a lot are ones that don't get me excited, right? Carolina, Washington, even Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh would be a horrendous fit for him. But if he goes to the Saints, right, and the Saints have a really good offensive line, they've got a fantastic running back. They've got at least one really good receiver, Michael Thomas. You're playing in a dome in good weather. I could see him being very, very solid. He probably hits his upside in New Orleans. That's just one spot where I feel like the floor gets dramatically higher. Some of these other spots, I just don't see it.
Yeah, and even looking at the upside in a place like New Orleans, maybe the floor is safe as long as you have Michael Thomas healthy and on the field, and you have Alvin Kamara healthy and on the field, and maybe they use one of these draft picks that they acquired from Philadelphia to I don't know, maybe draft a wide receiver in that range and start to fill out that room a little bit more. If maybe they go Kenny Pickett at 16 and then draft, a Chris Olave or any
Jamison Williams,
whatever.
Right?
Yes, Jamison Williams, one of these wide receivers that fall to them at 19. Maybe that sounds feasible, but for me, I'm still thinking the upside for Kenny Pickett, even when all those things go right, is right around QB 20, like QB 18, and that's not upside that I want. Like that's not the way that I sort of approach my dynasty teams. I'm always going for upside, especially when you're looking at some of these prospects. I'm looking towards what is the ceiling, and is that ceiling worth the floor? And for me, nah.
You want somebody that can consistently win weeks for you, where Pickett will be fine. Like I think he's going to give you.
He probably won't lose you a week, and that's
probably not
great.
Probably not.
But
this is tough. Does Atlanta do anything for you if they draft him at 8?
No, and I think going back to this question mark of can they put the right assets around him, I don't think Kyle Pitts is going to be enough, and Cordell Patterson are going to be enough to sustain Kenny Pickett and give him a safe volume or a safe floor there.
All right. My last question for you. Let's say he goes to Atlanta. Is he going to be a good enough quarterback to get the ball to the targets that we care about, like Kyle Pitts? If Pitts is tied to Pickett for the next 5 or 6 years, will you view that as, hey, only if he had a better quarterback, then he could actually be the top tight end in Dynasty?
I guess I look at Kyle Pitts at this point. Like I think there's two separate questions here. I think Kyle Pitts is good enough to supersede any questions at quarterback. So like, I'm not even worried about that there,
Okay.
but Kenny Pickett, I mean, he can absolutely deliver a football. He can make good decisions. So I'm not necessarily concerned that he's not going to be a guy that can deliver a ball, because I think we know that he can. But it's kind of like looking at Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr. They can both.
That was going to be my example. I think he can be the Kirk Cousins, where certainly good enough to get the ball to Justin Jefferson and Thielen, and not maybe somebody like Baker Mayfield, who struggled to consistently feed his number one receiver in Odell Beckham. I think he's going to be closer to that for fantasy purposes than Baker. Is that fair?
And I mean, yeah, for sure. Looking at Kirk Cousins, he's a guy that do you trust him to deliver the ball? Do you want to draft his assets on the receiving end? Absolutely. But are you necessarily that excited about drafting him for fantasy? Probably not. And that's kind of how I'm viewing Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I agree. So just to be clear, Kate, you have Kenny Pickett as QB5 in this class. I have him as QB4. Just overall in quarterback ranks, you probably would have Kenny Pickett close to quarterback 25, 26. I think I'd have him around quarterback 22, 23. But we're talking about just the difference in a couple spots here. So neither of us are all that in on Kenny Pickett going into the NFL draft. Maybe something will happen. We'll change our mind, but we're just not absolutely in love with the prospect.
For sure. And you know what, guys? If you guys are fans of Kenny Pickett and you guys want to at me on Twitter at FF Fall Blast and throw me your case, I want to hear it, because I want to be open-minded. I don't want to be bah humbug. I want to be yay humbug. I want to support people, lift them up.
All right. One more quick break to tell you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock up on all the parts you need. Rock Auto has everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low, and they're the same for professionals or do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Kate, the last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to run through Todd McShay's latest mock draft and just go through some of the landing spots for the fantasy relevant players. Not going to spend a lot of time on each one. Let's do a sentence or two so we can run through these. I just want your gut reactions. Garrett Wilson to the Jets at number 4.
I like it. I love Garrett Wilson. Pro ready. Instant lift for Zach Wilson and company.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably the best receiver in the class. Number 8, the Atlanta Falcons, Drake London, building a basketball team over there.
I love this. This is a nice move. Get strength, size, even more of it. Love this. Drake London, I think, could be an instant fantasy relevant asset there. Marcus, you skipped over number 6 overall.
Yeah, it's Kenny Pickett to the Panthers. I don't want to talk about Kenny Pickett anymore. Chris Olave to Washington.
I hate this for Chris Olave, just given the questions at quarterback, but the Washington is getting a very talented wide receiver. So hopefully that should help Terry McLaurin if they can ever secure the quarterback.
Yeah, I hate that for Olave. It's just a bad fit. Jamison Williams to the Chiefs at number 17 in trade up.
I would like to see Jamison Williams, obviously torn ACL in the national championship game. So question marks about that timeline. I would have liked for them, and I guess I'm not sure which of these wide receivers I would have had them take here. I would have maybe not had them move up at all in this mock trade with the Chargers. I love the fit long term, but I think while they're in this window with Patrick Mahomes, I'd like to see him get a healthy wide receiver who's going to be able to take advantage of these preseason reps and, just be a little bit more ready physically, not worrying about that rehab process.
If Jamison Williams goes to the Chiefs, he's going to be wide receiver 1 in all of dynasty leagues. I'm just telling you. Next couple ones. Jahan Dotson, Penn State wide receiver to the Packers at 22.
Yeah, that's
sure.
Yeah.
Traylon Burks to the Cardinals at 23.
Interesting fit. Traylon Burks, that gives them like a big-bodied wide receiver. It definitely could be interesting to see what he'd accomplish there with DeAndre Hopkins in the mix.
And Rondale Moore, because they he's about 75 pounds heavier than Rondale Moore, but they kind of do the same things, right? It's very interesting. Christian Watson to the Titans at 26.
I like this. I definitely like this. And I like this for Ryan Tannehill as well. None of these are exciting to me right now. I feel like Kenny Pickett just like put me in
I got you a good one. Here we go. Desmond Ritter to the Lions at 32.
I like this. I really like this. And actually, I think this is one of the moves that we talked about yesterday, potentially.
Yeah, fantastic.
When we were doing our Desmond Ritter discussion, definitely gives Ritter a little bit more time to develop. But as I said, I think he's already, I think he's already pretty pro ready, but this gives him, some extra time to refine some of those skills because you do still have Jared Goff in the mix. So I like this move a lot.
I love it. And let him sit for a year. Perfect fit in that offense, playing inside of the dome. Love it. 36, Sky Moore to the Giants. I hate that for Sky Moore. Wish he'd go somewhere else.
I hate it. Yeah, this is just, again, probably a thing that's a move that's good for the Giants, but not so great for the receiver because it hasn't really mattered what weapons they've gotten in there. I think with the issues at quarterback, they're just, it kind of like how we said, maybe Kirk Cousins isn't a fantasy relevant quarterback, but he can deliver a ball. This is kind of the opposite of that. We need a quarterback that can deliver a ball. And Sky Moore's a wide receiver that we've seen flying up draft boards recently, but I feel like we're throwing him on an island and waving goodbye here if he's drafted by the New York Giants.
Matt Corral to the Seahawks at pick 40.
I don't hate this.
I don't hate it either. Feels right.
I think especially too, just given the current construction of how they're running their offense too, I think any rookie quarterback that comes into Seattle, if he is asked to start right away, if they're not maybe keen on giving anybody else a chance there, if they want to throw the rookie quarterback right into the mix, I think their offense with the emphasis on the run game, as long as you have a healthy Rashad Penny, that takes some pressure off of your rookie quarterback, which is
I like it.
It's pretty nice.
George Pickens to the Colts at 42. Love that one. Love it.
Love that, especially with Matt Ryan in this offense. Absolutely fantastic. And they're basically getting a first-round capital wide receiver who, didn't look necessarily the same after returning from a torn ACL. But this is a guy that we definitely had in the conversation to be a day one selection and could have been one of the first wide receivers off the board if he hadn't suffered that injury. So Colts are getting an absolute steal here if they get George Pickens at 42.
It's perfect with Michael Pittman. 2 big receivers on the outside with Matt Ryan throwing the ball down the field. I love it. All right, let's do one-word thoughts on the rest of these guys. Okay, just one word. Sam Howell to the Falcons in a trade-up.
Delightful.
John Mechie, wide receiver, Alabama to the Saints at 49.
I like this. That's
fine. Breece Hall, running back, Iowa State to the Chiefs at 50.
No.
Yeah, I agree. Trey McBride, tight end, Colorado State to the Packers at 53.
No.
Kenneth Walker, running back, Michigan State to Buffalo at 57.
I don't think it's necessary, but I mean, love.
Okay. And last one, Greg Dulcich, tight end from UCLA, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No.
A lot of no's there. I don't get those running back fits. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But we talked about Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. Like, if they get past a certain point in the second round, there's not a lot of great fits, especially if somebody like Atlanta goes wide receiver. If the Jets ignore, running back, if the Texans ignore running back, it's not a lot of ideal fits. So there is Todd McShay's mock draft. Go check it out on ESPN.com. But go check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show. They do a fantastic job. They did a full first-round mock on Monday. It was really, really good. A lot of interesting landing spots for the quarterback. So please go check that out. Check out the Locked On Dynasty show on YouTube. We're putting up shows now every single day, starting, I believe, this week is our first week of shows every week. So you can check us out over there. You can check us out on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. You can follow Kate on Twitter at FFBallBlast. She would love to hear your Kenny Pickett thoughts and why she's wrong. She's not, by the way, but why you think she's wrong. You can follow me at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow, where I'm sure we're going to be talking about another quarterback. Right, Kate?
I believe Matt Corral is next, no?
Sure. We're going to be talking about Matt Corral tomorrow. There you go. We just played our show. Matt Corral. See you guys later.